Hi, I've got another Netgalley book to talk to you about, and it's Mrs. Death. It's not exactly a new release because I think I've seen it talked about before, but it's going to be released in paperback now, so this is why it's on the Netgalley list. And it's a debut novel by, let me get this right, Selina Godden, who's a performing artist and poet. And it's a book all about death, Mrs. Death. And straight away, our sensibilities are challenged because we've always been taught, haven't we, that the Grim Reaper with his scythe is death, this male character in his hood carrying this huge scythe. But no, not in this book. Mrs. Death is one of the invisible. She's a homeless black woman that people walk by, people ignore. And this is Mrs. Death. And because of her invisibility, she is able to carry on her job. There are lots of trigger warnings in this book. You've got massacres, you've got murders, you've got abuse, every sort of death you can mention. So there's a huge amount of trigger warnings in here. So the book itself, Mrs. Death is tired. She's had enough of death. And she finds Williford, a troubled writer, and she unburdens her soul to him. She talks to him and eases her conscience. Now, Wolf is no stranger to death because he's one of the ones that Mrs. Death let escape. He was caught up in a fire in a tower where they lived, almost reminiscent of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. He was caught up in this. His mother died, but he escaped. So he is one of the ones that Mrs. Death let go. So she talks to Wolf about all the deaths. And many of them are real. They're names that we know and have read about. So there's lots of deaths in there that we are already familiar with. You know, going back to Jack the Ripper, to sort of modern times and unsolved murders. The book is, I was going to say multimedia, but there's poems, letters, diaries, dialogues, all types of different ways of telling the story. You even get a perspective from a desk, if the desk talks to us. And for some reason, because of this, I did find it difficult to follow at times. Despite the darkness, despite all the death, there is an optimism in there because she starts talking about heroes. And it's the heroes that we've lost, the David Bowies and things like that, you know, the heroes that we worshipped and have now died. And then she goes on to say, well, you know, there are still heroes here. The heroes are the ones that are, you know, the art galleries, the bookshops where people are able to meet and think and talk. So those are the heroes. So there is an optimism there amongst all the death. And the ending, I've never seen an ending like it. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the way it ends is very, very unique and powerful. It's of something I've never seen before. So this is a debut novel, and I enjoyed it. It took a little bit of getting my way through it, but very original and very thought-provoking at times. So yes, so that's Mrs. Death by Selina Godden. And I think the paperback comes out beginning of January. So, happy reading, take care, and bye.